just tell you to focus on the front of the room, not on me, but the gorgeous women sitting in front of me. Good morning, I'm Karen Dolan and I'm the MC this morning. So let us begin with an acknowledgement of country, that of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, as the traditional owners and custodians of the lands in which we gather, and we pay respect to elders past, present, and those who sit before us today. I can see that most of you have forgotten your convent manners. So grace began about 15 minutes ago, so consider it said and enjoy the food that's in front of you. And we will have a lovely breakfast morning, followed by an exciting and incredibly challenging morning before you're allowed to go home. First, we have a small video, which is one from the Honourable Kyle Ma, who is a proud Aboriginal man and the Attorney General and Minister for Aboriginal Affairs in South Australia. He couldn't be with us this morning, but he's recorded this short message for the conference. Under his leadership, the first election of the South Australian First Nations voice to Parliament was held on Saturday, on Saturday the 16th of March 2024. So this is very exciting for South Australia. Thanks, John.
Hello everyone, my name is Kyle Ma. I'm the South Australian Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. I want to acknowledge where I'm recording this message to you from on the Kaurna land of the Adelaide Plains in South Australia. It always has been and it always will be Aboriginal land. It's a really difficult time now for Aboriginal people in this country following the referendum, a disappointing vote for the vast majority of Aboriginal people. But it means we all have to turn our mind, those in policy areas like myself, those who deliver services to Aboriginal people like yourselves, about what it is that we do and how we can do it better in the future. What's happened in the past, the actions that governments, that institutions, that religious organisations have taken have caused a huge deal of harm in many ways to Aboriginal people, families and communities. The lingering effects of the stolen generations, the dispossession of land, policies that were applied to Aboriginal people that weren't applied to others that had a hugely detrimental effect. The actions of the past absolutely linger and are traumatic for Aboriginal people today. And we've got to understand where we come from, understand where we are now and what we need to do in the future. I'm looking forward to working closely with organisations, with service providers, but most importantly directly with Aboriginal people about what reconciliation means going forward, what it is we need to do and do better. Most places around the country now have treaty policies and are implementing treaty as we are in South Australia and as we have in previous governments. Truth telling is a really important component as well. It's about, as I've talked about, that understanding what's happened in the past, informing where we are and what we do in the future. I hope you have fruitful discussions with your organisation and the organisations that you work with about how we can provide services to better Aboriginal people in the year ahead and in the decades ahead. Thank you.
Let me now introduce you to Vicky Gonzalez Burrows, who is the mother of a 1 and a 3-year-old. And look at that gorgeous face. Can you imagine that that could be possible? With 2 teenage stepchildren living in Waddak Noongar country in Western Australia, and is married to Ed. How lucky is he? She is the Executive Director of Mission and Ethos at MercyCare, an early learning community services and an aged organisation in the Mercy spirit. She's a Spiritual Director, Vice President of Spiritual Care Australia, and enjoys singing and dancing and being with friends and family. Prior to working at MercyCare, Vicky was the Director of Aboriginal Catholic Ministry and lecturing in social justice at the University of Notre Dame, and has a background in prison chaplaincy, reconciliation, youth work. She has completed a Bachelor of Arts major in Politics and International Relations and a Masters of Theological Studies. Would you welcome Vicky?
Good morning, everyone. And I'm honoured and delighted to be the opportunity to moderate and to sit alongside three strong Yoorrook. So in the Noongar language where I'm from, three strong women. And I always feel the strength of women leaders in social service delivery and community engagement is really strong. And particularly, the important role that women play in Aboriginal communities. And so we're honoured to hear that today. So I hope this morning we're be open to listening to the wisdom of three women, really reflecting on what is the path forward for reconciliation. As many of us know and were involved in our social services in our community, post-referendum, the work we did around the referendum to be having hard conversations about our past, about our future and positive opportunities, and what now flows in this post-referendum time, this really important time of continuing courageous conversations, truth-telling, listening, and walking alongside Aboriginal people. Many of our organisations would have reconciliation action plans and on different parts of the journey. My organisation recently launched our second Innovate RAP, and it took a bit of really discernment on where we focus and where we put our energy and how we actually make sure we're being led by our Aboriginal team and Aboriginal staff. So we've got a journey that we need to walk. But this journey of reconciliation is more than also RAP plans. I was having a conversation with manager of Aboriginal Pathway Strategies before I left, who said the time for window dressing was over. It's a time of real, genuine relationships and real times for healing and action and what we need to do. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to introduce you to these three beautiful women, and they'll come sit down and we'll have a kind of a conversation about where they're feeling the reconciliation movement needs to be moving, the work that we should be doing to be engaging, and also telling us a bit about some of the really amazing work they're engaged in. So we're really honoured this morning to have Aunty Esme Bamblett with us. She's Dr. Esmeralda Bamblett. Aunty Esme is a Bangarang, Wiradjuri and Tonarong woman. She is a community advocate, an educator, a researcher and a writer. She is an inspirational leader and has made major contributions to the understanding of how to conduct research with Aboriginal communities ethically and thoroughly, with a view to giving real-life benefits for the research participants. Esme has been the CEO of the Aboriginal Advancement League since 2008. She's also the senior pastor of Burrows Christian Ministries and is the first women president of the Fitzroy Stars Football and Netball Club. She's founded a family partnership called Neenan, which provides cultural awareness training, education, consultancy, research, professional development and graphic design. And we also have Erica Bernard. Erica is a Yoorrook Kitchen woman from the Kimberley. She was born in Broome and has lived there on Yoorrook country, her grandfather's country, throughout her life. Erica's worked in Catholic education for over 20 years as a vital link between the communities and the Catholic education system in the Kimberley. As the current Catholic Education WA Broome Regional Office Community Liaison Officer, she travels to 13 schools in the Kimberley to sit, to listen, to share story, to dialogue, and to connect schools, families, parishes, and communities. Focused on her desire to create harmony and balance in life, faith, and culture, Erica has been a strong voice in her work with the government and church agencies and educational and Aboriginal organisations, such as the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Catholic Council. She also was a representative on the Plenary Council for the Diocese of Broome. And our third panellist this morning is Aunty Colleen Harney. Aunty Colleen Harney is a proud Tarrabalonga, Bunga, Goring, and her adopted Manaru Ngario woman. She's lived on Koronai country in East Gippsland for 60 years now. Aunty Colleen is a mother, a wife, a grandmother, and a friend to many. She's also the truth receiver at Yoorrook, based in East Gippsland. Aunty Colleen has spent 40 years working with community throughout the Gippsland and Adelaide to ensure that the community gets the support they need to have a strong voice. This including roles such as a field officer at Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service, community engagement officer and family mediator at Gippsland and East Gippsland Aboriginal Corporation in Barnsdale, and as a voluntary elder support staff at the Other Way Centre in Adelaide. She's proud to be one of the founders of the New Year's Eve Koori marshalling program in Lakes Entrance, which was founded to reduce the number of communities being locked up. Aunty Colleen's motto is, "I'm not in it for my gains, I'm in it for the gains of my people." Wow. So as just said, we have three amazing women to be hearing from and listening to their wisdom and experience. So thought we might open it up and anyone who would like to speak first. I want to share is currently thinking about that question of where we are today, post-referendum, and all this experience that each of you have. Where are you currently focusing your energy on in our reconciliation movement forward? And think, you might want to think about and share with where you think that this group of people working in social services could be focusing their energy. It's just the first question to get us started this morning.
So thank you very much for that introduction. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge country. We are on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. As you've heard, I'm not Wurundjeri, and I'm so glad that they've let me work on their land and live on their land. As someone said before, it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So where do we focus our energy? First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Besides what you've heard there, I have 5 children, 20 grandchildren, 17 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-grandchild. And no, I'm not that old. So I've got a large family. The reason I say that is because family is really important to us. We're a family-oriented people. It's a very important part of our culture and kinship structure. Then I'd like to say that we follow in the footsteps or the footprints of giants. If you ever go to the Aborigines Advanced League, you'll see our mural there with all the leaders that we've had over the years, including William Cooper, you've probably all heard of him, and Sir Pastor Doug Nichols. So we do follow in the footprints of giants. And in Victoria today, we have a treaty process. That treaty process didn't happen overnight. It happened over all those years with all those people. Every one of them laid a print for us to follow. And I was thinking about whether that should be footsteps or footprints. And I found out in my research that you get DNA from a footprint, not a footstep. And a footstep is something you hear, but a footprint is something you see. And if we look at treaty today in Victoria, we can see clearly that we have followed footprints. And I think that each one of us, it leaves a footprint. I really wanted to see the voice in the Constitution there. It was one thing that I really put my heart in the last few years. And I thought it was really important. And you know what? I thought we were going to get it. So when we didn't get it, I was absolutely devastated. And I actually wanted to just go into a hole and really cover the blanket over my head and not come out for a while. But then I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? 6 million people voted yes. I thought, you know, that was a lot of people for us, 6 million people. So where are we now? We're in a place that we were in before, but nothing changed. Well, one thing did change. We found out there were a lot of people on our side. Not enough. But I also think there are more people on our side. I think they just didn't know how to, and there was misinformation. But reconciliation is still alive and well in this country. And you guys are the most important people in this process. Reconciliation is beneficial for Australia. It's beneficial for all Australians, not just us. And I think that's what people don't understand. Reconciliation is not about us taking things away from Australians. Reconciliation is about the recognition of us as First Peoples. It's the recognition of the things that have happened to us. And it's a relationship going forward. As a Catholic institution, and as I'm a pastor, we understand what reconciliation means in biblical terms. And in biblical terms, it means that one party, God, had to lean down and put in place a process for us, man, when he didn't have to. He was the stronger one, and he could have just said, no, I'm not going to worry about him. But he became a man so that he could reconcile us to himself. Reconciliation is about being big-hearted. It's about thinking about others around us. And it's about thinking about those people who need a hand up. You know, if our mob today was in a situation where we had parity with the rest of Australia, we wouldn't worry, honestly. But there's a third of our mob who are in dire straits. They are below parity with the rest of Australia. There's a third of our mob who struggle, but they need support. And there's a third of our mob who are okay, and we help the others. So, reconciliation is really important to all of us. Reconciliation is something that we should all strive to achieve. And the treaty process and truth-telling process is a part of it. We have to start with the truth, and that's hard. And I didn't really think about it until recently, but in order to tell the truth, Australians, non-Aboriginal Australians, have to grapple with some gruesome stuff. And you know, for all of us, it's traumatic. For all of us, we don't want to go there, but we have to. And we have to really clean out the cupboard so that we can go on and we can reconcile. There's no reconciliation without truth. We can't shortcut it. So that's my little bit for now. Probably come back later.
Thank you.
If I can hear.
Okay. I certainly agree with what Esme has said. I'm all for reconciliation. I was brought up to respect cultures and to be able to get on with all people and to accept them for who they are.
I was just trying to think here where to start. My heartfelt gratitude and thanks for what was my name? Uncle that smoked us the other day. Me coming from my country far, far away. The smoking ceremony, when someone does it on their country, it's an invitation to be in their place. And to me, it is a signal or an invitation or a sign for me to know that I'll be safe in this country. And if you come to my part of the country, that's what I would do as well. So people would feel safe walking around the Yoorrook country. That's my grandfather country. And in doing that, I had permission from my grandmother, my Minnie, to do that to visitors that come to our part of the world. And then thinking about reconciliation, I think there were two things that I've thought of working to get. We have a lot of teachers that come to our part of the country to teach in our school communities. And we have a program, program called Kimberley Calling. So any teachers that want to come up that way, they usually see my face first before they go and get interviewed by the principal. And some of the questions we ask, or we just have a conversation about is, have you worked with Aboriginal people before? Have you been to a community? And all those little things. So they can have a fair idea of what they're getting themselves into. And it's usually me telling them, I hope that's not a big, because if it stings, I'll be in hospital. Me telling them when they come to our part of the country is to come with an open heart, open eyes, and open ears, not necessarily an open mouth just yet, but to come with those three first things to build a relationship with our people, because our people have seen a lot of people come and go, especially teachers and people in leadership and principals, and our kids see that as well. So that's the first thing that they need to do, is to develop a relationship, and that's by sitting down and talking and allowing our people to make sure that they feel welcome in that country. And the other thing about reconciliation that sort of came to my head straight away when I heard the word was, after sitting on the plenary council, our church is now looking into enculturation. And in our church up in the Kimberley, I think we do that fairly well, especially in our communities, because Mass is celebrated in most communities in language. And we have priests that come from other countries, and we have priests that are non-Indigenous as well. So for them to come and be patient and sort of, well, in the end they can't help but stand back, because our people are really not forceful, but they know their place and they know what to do, when to do it. But for them to come to with an open heart and don't be, allow what's in front of them and what's going to happen, just allow it to happen. So we have elders and we have church leaders that do the blessing of the water, not necessarily the priests. In a place like Mormon and Up School, we have our elders that do the blessing. And part of that, and Ring of Soap as well, part of that, Bishop Michael, who is just looking after us at the moment, I don't know how much times he's been smoked at there, but every time he goes for a visit, they smoke him, so he keeps going back. He told us this beautiful story. There was a teacher that was wanting to get baptized, and they had our church leaders there, and he asked the people, do you want this young person to be baptized here in your country? And they said yes. Now Ring of Soap got some beautiful soaps around the place. That's why you got Ring of Soap, that really meow you. And there's one soap that's very, very special, so they get the water from there. And those church leaders and community leaders said, yes, we would love for this person to get baptized in our country. So he allowed them to do that with him standing back. So it was the people that were baptizing, not only the teacher that that wanted to get baptized, but the kids that were there as well. So just those two things that came really quickly to mind when we spoke about reconciliation. And then going into this yes and no vote, like an Esme, I was keeping it up, so I didn't want to talk about it. Father Brian McCoy just wrote an article in the Yoorrook, and he talked about the death of the referendum, and he told a story about how we sit in sorry camp, how our community lives. When someone dies, they go to sorry camp, and they would stay there for a period of time. Some people do that over months, and elders observe people in their mourning, and they'll break that mourning when they feel that that person is ready to go back into society and go back into normal life and living, and to, if they see that they've finished grieving and not carrying too much on their heart. And he wrote that, and it made a lot of sense to me from what I was feeling and what I was going through with the yes and no vote. And at the time I had my husband with me, and she was she's a woman of action. When she heard that the no vote didn't, that got in and yes vote got out, she just wanted to choke somebody. So she was ringing everybody to have a, really rough conversation or a very angry conversation. I just sat there and said, oh yeah, okay. My thing, I went into silence, and it was a silence for like a couple of weeks. But eventually when you go to meetings and things like that, and everybody open up to do this check-in with you around the table. So everybody checks in, and the check-ins would always, around about that time, would be about how you're feeling after the referendum. And a few meetings that I've been to, I passed my thing because I wasn't ready to talk about it. I wasn't ready to address it, and slowly now I think coming back and coming to places like this to talk to you guys, and then being outside of my comfort zone where I was quite happy to be at home and not talking to anybody or face society, that little things have come to my mind to do things very slowly. And I love that quote, and I like the song, and I like the artist that sings it, from little things, big things grow. And I think that's a little mantra that I would keep, because in my capacity, what I do, if I can change one person with either my story or my presence, or just meeting somebody, that will make them like our more. And then the seed, or like when you drop a pebble in the water, that it goes out. And we all like the seed, like the magabala seed. When it opens, all these seedlings just go with the wind wherever it goes, and it drops everywhere. So I'm thinking of like a magabala at the moment, but from, little things if I can do. When I start thinking too big, I get flustered and think everything is a bit too big and that I don't want to do anything. So for myself, I will start with just the little things that hopefully will make change for one more.
Maybe thinking about in our places, what are those little things that we can do? We've all got some information on our tables about a truth-telling process, and around Australia, we've heard there's different treaties, truth-telling, assemblies, parliaments, voices in different ways. So while we are on a this voice enshrined in the Constitution did not come up, there is movement happening around Australia. These processes and other processes of self-determination are happening. I was wondering if maybe, Annika, you might share a little bit about, and others can as well, about what's involved in some of these treaty truth-telling processes, but you would share a little bit about what you're doing in Yoorrook, and I suppose as a thing for us to think about, how do we position our organisations, the work that we do, to be connected to these processes so that we're responding in the best way?
I presently work for the Yoorrook Justice Commission as a truth receiver for the Gippsland region. Our organisation starts with, at the very top, we have a board of commissioners, and of 5 commissioners, and 4 are of Aboriginals and 1 non-Aboriginals. Under the board, we have a CEO, then the truth receivers, along with a team of counsellors and the lawyers, and then it's all the office staff. So I will speak on what I do in Gippsland. So I'm the truth receiver, taking a lot of stories of injustices that have happened to my people in Gippsland. I don't physically have an office. My office is sitting by the river with my participant and clients. We are the very first state in the whole of Australia that is doing this, and I'd like to see that it happens right around Australia. The healing that we're having is through counselling, but I strongly feel that there should also be spiritual counselling as well for our people that have gone through the injustices. I can give you, with this, you need to have very strong listening skills, and with me I have a lot of empathy towards our participants. So the way that I do it, I sit with the individual down by the river and write out their story. Particularly with the women, they get very, very upset. And so then I put off the recording until they are strong enough to record whatever their injustice is. I think this is a very important thing that needs to happen in addressing the injustices that have happened for my people, and hopefully we can get this happening right around Australia.
Would you like to share any other self-determination processes at Victoria?
So firstly, I'll talk about Yoorrook as well. When we started the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, one of the things that we thought about was, in order to get a treaty, we need to have truth-telling. So we called on the government to establish a truth-telling commission, and a commission that sat outside of government and talked to Aboriginal people about the injustices that have happened, but also talked to non-Aboriginal institutions, such as the police, about what had happened in that area. So we called on truth-telling because in order to have a treaty, you do have to know what did happen and why there is a need for a treaty. I think treaty itself actually encompasses truth and justice, the two parts of treaty that are really important. So the first thing we did was call for Yoorrook, and Yoorrook has been going now for, I think, nearly 3 years probably, because it started about a year into the first iteration of the Treaty Assembly. We are now in the second iteration of the Treaty Assembly. During the first one, we had to set up a framework to negotiate a treaty. So it wasn't about treaty, it was about setting up the framework in preparation to negotiate. In this iteration, we actually have to set up minimum standards to negotiate as well. And minimum standards means that we have to get our community on side. We have to know what our community wants. Our community has to be involved in the process. As the co-chair of the elders of the Assembly and the Elders' Voice, we've just established an Elders' Voice to actually hear from the elders as well. But getting back to self-determination, the voice, the Parliament, in the Constitution was about self-determination. A lot of people don't understand what self-determination is, but actually it's very simple. The right of a people to determine the policies and programs that impact on them and their children. That's what it is, simply. We don't have self-determination. Aboriginal people in this country have been under that many government policies and programs established by non-Aboriginal people to get the best outcomes from our people. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. If it had happened, it's been 237 years, I think, this year. If that had happened, we would now have parity. But in Victoria right now, we have the highest incarceration rates in Australia. We have the highest out-of-home care rates in Australia. In the last couple of years, I think we have had 5 or 6 Aboriginal deaths in custody in this state. Parity is a long way off. And self-determination is the problem. If we have the capacity to determine the programs and policies that best suit our mob, we would be able to have parity that we're after. It's as simple as this, really. In your house, you have the right to determine what happens to your children. Unfortunately, at the moment, we know governments are impacting on that as well. But it's in our culture, I think the assumption that we are all the same is problematic. We have got different ways of doing things and thinking about things and being. And so when you place over our mob programs and policies that are devised by non-Aboriginal people, what you have is a misfit, because those programs and policies are not reaching the goal. So when we think about self-determination, it's not a threat to anybody else. It's really about us having the capacity and the right to determine those policies and practices that will impact on us. And the establishment of Yoorrook enables us to get to the truth so that people understand why we need to have a say in our own affairs. So thank you.
Only that this truth-telling and story, I was just thinking about our story generation, people that are in our part of the country. Majority of them, or all of them, went to Beagle Bay. That's Yoorrook country. So when there's people there doing acknowledgement to the country there, they always include all those children that were taken away from other countries and that have made that place their home. There's still a lot of truth-telling that needs to come through that process. They have link-ups, so family is finding family from who have moved as well or have been taken away down south or in another state. So through that Story Generation office that we've got based in Broome, they're sort of filtering out now to, and there are consultants or there are people that are working, and they're children of there are children from mothers and fathers who were stolen. So they are being active with that role of going out through country now and sitting down and connecting families, and some of them are finding their families, and we still just got a few left now. So when it comes, the apology, that anniversary on the 13th, I think it was, February, there was a gathering of those stolen generation people that are still left in our communities, all our uncles and aunties. And then Sorry Day will be coming up, and we do the Reconciliation Week, so there's that opportunity for them all to come together and sit down and tell stories and heal as they do that. But then now and then you look at some kids, and in my parish, I'm very active in helping people organise funerals. Actually, I've got two when I go back. But as you look at their stories, and these are young people, and you follow their story and you hear where they come from, and that's when I always understand that intergenerational trauma and what they're carrying. So these people, either they've taken their life, or their health hasn't been really good, or their life hasn't been on the right track, so they've been living rough, or hasn't been looking after themselves. And in those funeral times, when you're sitting with families and they tell the story of that person, you can see it started from all these policies and things that we had in place where their families were taken from country or taken from something. So they find to their identity of who I am. When they find out who they are and they go back and they reconnect, sometimes it's not neglect, but it's a little bit hard to sort of to strike up a relationship straight away. Like if you've been away and you come back and you get all happy, but there's this building of relationship. And I'm always thinking about my cousins every time. Even though they've been brought up in Broome and in Bidanga, when they go back to their mother's country where their family is still alive and still working and talking, and I think there's one brother left, not for my cousins, they find it really hard to connect. It's because their mother was taken away and they didn't grow up with them. So there's this healing process that my cousins have to do. And every time that they have to go back for a family funeral, there's this heavy, heavy thing that they carry on their heart, and how they step and how they go back into the space of helping that family. One of my cousins was actually the oldest in that family, but because her mother was taken away to Broome, she finds it really hard to be the oldest to order everybody around. Unlike me, I can order anybody, but they listen to me half the time. But yeah, she finds it really, she struggles with it, that she still has to find her place, which is sad, in her mother's country with her uncles and aunties. Well, she only got one uncle left now, and her cousins. So yeah, but that doesn't look after her, but she finds it really, really hard to to fit in that place. So all that truth telling, and it's still very, very raw for us in the Kimberley, and there's different truth telling in stories, and we haven't even touched on sites, massacre sites, or things that have happened in certain areas around our place, and just thinking about my diocese at the moment with everything that is happening, and the truth telling, and how we move forward as a church. But I loved how Claire's story the other night at dinner, she just hit the nail on the head for me, and I'm taking her words, and it made a lot of sense to me that my people are my church. Yeah, and if that doesn't satisfy me anymore, I'm going to make up an Erica church.
Oh, sorry, yes.
It seems there's so much about relationship, respect and listening. And as I was thinking, I'm also thinking, and you alluded to, and Claire was speaking around realising power. And it made me reflect on if we're committed to a self-determination and some of these processes, it's about the sharing or the giving of power. And that's hard to do. And when people have been in positions of power, or maybe organisations or systems, sharing of that and letting go. And as Christians, how do we understand power is really important to consider. So I'm just thinking about our own organisation and our reflection on how we approach these next steps around self-determination. In Western Australia, the government's made some big commitments around supporting Aboriginal community-controlled organisations, and so a lot of tenders for services in community are for Aboriginal organisations. We are not an Aboriginal organisation, and so this has to impact our future vision of the work we do if we are going to continue to be relevant for community. That how are we working with Aboriginal communities? There's a bit of letting go of power, perhaps. We're proud of, our connection of years that we've been in Australia doing some of this work, but maybe we won't always be doing the work if it's actually about self-determination. So as I suppose thinking about our positioning and where we're as Catholic social service providers, I'm really interested in your reflections on what that might mean for how organisations position ourselves. How do we work more effectively in delivering services in community if we're committed to thinking about self-determination and not just doing? How do you think that should impact our work as social service organisations?
I think it's really difficult. I agree that, there are a lot of non-Aboriginal organisations who support us. A lot of funding. I know there was a research done a couple of years ago about how much funding goes to Aboriginal organisations compared to non-Aboriginal organisations who support us. And it was actually more that went to non-Aboriginal organisations. We need probably a balance more than anything. I think one of the problems, I was thinking about the other day, that one of the problems about Australians, we believe in win-lose. If I win, you lose. Or if you win, I lose. And I remember doing a thing about COVID, and he talks about win-win. I think when we empower other people, we empower ourselves. And I think for too long, we feared that empowering other people means we disempower ourselves. So as organisations that support Aboriginal people, I think you need to give some power away. But you're not giving it at the expense of the organisation. You're actually giving it for the organisation to empower themselves. We have to start thinking in terms of empowering others so that we can empower ourselves. What sort of vision do we have for Australia? If we're thinking about treaty and we're thinking about reconciliation and we're thinking about the impact of truth-telling, what do we want for Australia in the long run? What do we want to see the Australia like in 20 years? When we talked about treaty, a woman came from Canada and she said, don't think about treaty in terms of tomorrow, think about treaty in terms of 7 generations. What do you want to see in 7 generations' time? What sort of Australia do we want to live in? And I was on the first Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation, and we had 14 Aboriginal people and 12 non-Aboriginal people. And we had like the mining company, we had the Farmers Federation, we had the land councils, you know. It was pretty hard going at first. But we had to come up with a vision. And the vision was a united Australia that values the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heritage and provides justice and equity for all. And I think that's a pretty good vision. I think that's even a vision we could have today. But as an Aboriginal woman, as a mother of those 5 children, a grandmother of 20 grandchildren, and a great-grandmother of 1, what do I want to see in 7 generations' time? 1, I want them, of course, as a pastor, to be Christians. As an Aboriginal woman, I want them to be strong in their identity. I want them to know who they are. I want them to know where they've come from, and I want them to be aware of our mobs. That's first and foremost. Secondly, I want them to be proud to be Australian. I want them to have parity with the rest of Australia. I want them to stand up and be proud to say, I'm an Australian Aborigine. That's what I want. So I think we need to empower others and we need to let go. It's just like when your children turn 18. All of a sudden, you have to let go. Or they force you. And it's hard. Why is it hard? You know why? Because we want to protect them. We want to look after them. We want to make sure they're safe. And we're not quite sure if we can trust them. So is that what our organisations are like? If we let go, what'll happen? But that even goes for our organisations. How much we do and how much we don't do. And how much we can trust and how much we don't trust. So I think for all of us, let's take a leaf out of Kobe's book and think about win-win going forward.
I think there needs to be more employment of Aboriginal people within your organisations. That is firstly creating reconciliation between Aboriginals and non-Aboriginals. I'm sorry, but I'm truly not into public speaking, so please forgive me there. With the job that I'm doing, the stories that I'm being told, particularly of child protection that are still taking our kids away, it is so sad. I'll give you a true story of a family member of mine who is a carer of her grandson. He is on the high end of the spectrum. Well, he was attending a special school in Bairnsdale, and Child Protection turned up and just removed the young grandson without notifying the grandmother. And it was that night that she got notice that he was removed. So he was taken into another region of Victoria. The grandmother got in contact with a lawyer, and then they got the grandson back with her. But when he came back, he was absolutely devastated. And they're still working with that young grandson. That was, goodness knows what happened to him within that placement. So there truly needs to be a lot more healing, and in particular for Yoorrook, it needs to be ongoing. as we're just starting to, start. It's going to be folding next year, and I think that is ever so wrong. So if there's some way that you could possibly help us to help you to keep going, that would be wonderful. Now, another thing that I'm also seeing, and I've seen it for many years, is domestic violence. I wouldn't know what it's like to be a victim of domestic violence, but I've seen and heard a lot. One of the, I'd like to put a recommendation to you, is that we have houses set up for the men who are perpetrators of violence. Instead of having them put into jails, the numbers are going sky high, and we need to have these houses set up for those men, where we have Christian male workers to help those men, empower them to get back on the right track and to be able to go back home and with no more violence happening. Okay, thank you.
Someone will give me sensitive invasion, yeah, or it might need to be organisation.
But remember the question again. There are little glimpses of self-determination, or people going out and doing things for themselves. A few of them come to mind. When Fitzroy was flooded last year and they flooded out the bridge, people just jump into action and rescuing everybody before services got there. And it might have been 2 days, I think, by the time the services got there. Then people outside and people that don't live on that country goes through a lot of red tape. And then now I think people are still waiting for money to rebuild as well. So there's all that red tape stuff that they go. So we can do so much, and we can talk and come up with all our solutions and have good ideas. And then when we come and we talk to different agencies, it's not blocked but stopped because of all the red tape that has to go through. I sat on this local government agency committee, and breakaway from that was a young people and children committee, and I think I was the only Indigenous person there to start with. And I was sitting there and I was listening to all these different agencies who was talking about our kids that were running amok in our town, all the naughty ones. They're not naughty, they're just bored. And everything, they're like PCYC, all these young people, little groups, and I think there might have been like 7 of them sitting around, and I'm sitting there next to this constable who, part of his role was to go and pick up these kids, or, when they get in trouble. So they wanted to stop that. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, hello, you're talking about my kids here, but you don't have any Aboriginal representative, any Aboriginal organisation here. So after a couple of meetings, this organisation came on under, and they look at, they do empowering communities. So they came on board, and then they started coming up with all these wonderful ideas of how they can address all these issues that they were having in the community with these kids. One of them was for the police to develop a relationship with their kids before they get into trouble, And because you don't get to see these kids, and then nothing ever gets done to help the family until that kid gets into the justice system. So then you have every organisation coming out to help that family or that kid. So sitting on those committees like that and listening to everybody of how they want to resolve our problem, or to help our kids, without us being present or even family members being present at these meetings. It was a little bit hard because then everybody came up with these ideas, and before you can even go any further from that, then they all had their own little quota. So they said, oh, we can't step over that person's lane or go into this person's lane because that's their job and that's their criteria and all that. So it goes round and round and round in circles. So I quit that committee, and I thought I'd just keep going to church and pray for everybody. But anyway, but our schools, working head to head, all our schools are very, we've got Aboriginal teaching assistants in our schools that not only help bridge the gap between the teacher and the kids and their language. And I think now we're seeing that they're becoming, some of them become carers too, but they know the families where these kids come from, and then they go out and they help and they go and they work with them as well. And the nicest thing is that they sit and talk with their teacher, so the teacher understands where these kids come from. So there's a little bit more understanding from kids when they come in, and all of a sudden they've been throwing chairs across the room or they having a fist fight, you know. So, and ATAs will tell them, you know, that kid probably didn't have a safe place to sleep that night, or they're at Auntie's house, or in a small community, they would walk around till late at night. I was going to school the other day, and one kid was like, but half asleep, and I said, you probably need to go to sleep early, but to break those little things. And we do have little Aboriginal organisations that sort of cater for families as well, especially out in our remote communities where they sit and they talk and address issues to see if they can help them to get their kids to school, or, you know, we had one principal that was really involved in her school community, and she'd go to the community meetings and she'd just tell them straight, no loud music on Thursday night or Friday, you know, because the kids going to come to school Friday, and don't go fishing when the tide's right, and if it's in the middle of the day and the kids want to go fishing with you as well. But I think we're getting smart because we're doing learning on country now, so if they end up going fishing, they can learn something while they fishing, yeah. Make it educational, and I think they might, yeah, think twice. But services in our communities, our schools play a very vital role, because especially in our remote communities, they're the most stable and stable place actually, because like now at the beginning of the year, not many other services get out there to service that community. So you find all our going to the school either to use facilities. Actually, one now, I think people got flooded the other day, so they were congregated at one school, and of course that school opened up classrooms, opened up their canteen, opened up their, you know, food bank cupboard as well. So our schools are like that up there in the Kimberley. We've done more services to come out and help. We have small little things that are happening. We've got De La Salle volunteers that come up to Bamblett. They're young people and they want to contribute into our community, and we find some then go away and they become teachers, and they come back and they want to teach in that community. We've got volunteer programs through our diocese that young people and some not so young people that come to volunteer in all our communities, and some come with a set of skills that could contribute in our communities in regards to helping out in certain ways. And I was just thinking in Broome, we've got MercyCare, there are different ones, but we've also come off the back of, and we're very fresh, of our religious orders that have been very big in the role of looking after us, or working with us, I should say enough, walking with us and pushed us, like the St. John of God sisters. I think I'm a product of them all, because, and the Palatine fathers and brothers, and they saw that education was very important, and that's how our mob would move forward. Their forward thinking in all of this was very thin, because you find there are people in all our communities, and they're in the offices, and they're in their community office, they're in our schools, they're in the health clinic, and they've all, I can guarantee that all of them would have had a Catholic education, and they would have been away from either at Littlemore, when there was a boarding facility there at the time, or down south in Perth and Ross Point with the Palatines. And there are people that run their communities and that are very strong, and they speak up when they need to speak up. And there was another story I was going to talk, but that's okay, because my mouth's getting tired now. Sorry.
But no, thank you, Erica. It's really beautiful hearing the different parts of where self-determination is and where it means. We now have the next 15 minutes to see if there are questions that you might have that you would like to ask our panel. It can be directly just to one of them, or anyone can answer that question. But really, it's very interesting what you were saying, that it's nothing about us without us, was a real key messages. So is there any questions on the tables that people would like?
Thank you very much for talking with us and your insight. In terms of telling the story, I wonder whether there's a place for non-Aboriginal people to tell the truth. I was just saying, I come from a rural area, past Wagga, and at Christmas I was busy asking, my great-great-uncle, was there any story in our family that included Aboriginal person? And I guess there was, quote, excuse me, a black man up a tree with a spear. I wanted to find his family, find what they had to say about that story, which is long since forgotten. Similarly with our institutions, and I work in hospitals, one of my hospitals they call a sewing place. Is there a place for non-Aboriginal people to face the truth? Is there a way to share that sort of story?
There definitely is. And lately, non-Aboriginal people have been telling stories. In regard to massacres, I've read stories from non-Aboriginal people who found out that in their family someone had been involved in actually undertaking a massacre. And they were ashamed of it and wanted to say they were sorry. I think there's a place for stories to come from everywhere. We have to get the stories, and good stories as well, good things that have happened with our lives. There have been a lot of non-Aboriginal people in my life who have been mentors to me. One of the reasons I'm sitting here today is because my minister, non-Aboriginal man, looked after me. My head mistress, when I went to school, she looked after me. And there was one lady that tutored me in Year 9, and she looked after me. So there's a lot of good stories, but we also have to come to grips with the bad ones and the ugly ones as well. And all of us say, this is the truth, and now we can just move on together, which is what we all need to do. But there's definitely a place for non-Aboriginal people to tell stories, our stories as well.
This is in regards to a massacre site. Years ago, I went walking on this property near Meetown. Then all of a sudden, I felt there was mainly women and kids that had been massacred. I was very fortunate to attend a NADSIC gathering, which was in Broome. and I was able to stand up the front, and the outcome of that talk that I did was that we were to have Aboriginals and non-Aboriginals go to the various massacre sites, and there needed to be circles, and the inner circle was to be made up of Aboriginal people, the outer circles were to be made up of non-Aboriginals, so that we could have healing for our victims on massacre sites, and I think that still needs to be done.
Before I pass it on, I just want to say there is a gathering at Kamai, Botany Bay, on the 2nd of March this year of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people coming together for non-Aboriginal people to ask forgiveness for all the things that have happened since the invasion. I'm not calling it colonisation, it was invasion. And for the Aboriginal people to forgive. And that's happening. A lot of people from around the country will be up there on the 2nd of March to actually for that gathering.
Just quickly, one story I'll share with you. Our Yoorrook office, Yoorrook people, just recently went to Germany or somewhere. Anyway, there were these scientists and people that took bones from our country. What do they call it? That's it. So our Yoorrook people who remains in Perth at the moment, we're waiting for them to come back. So there was these young people that went and they did the research and the story, and they did a information evening to sort of launch it a little bit, but not with our people present. Maybe to get it ready for. I was thinking part of that story, when they were reading, there was a little bit in there about our Catholic Church, Father Nicholas Emo. And now we've got a Father Nicholas Emo parish centre, and a young gentleman that just joined us in our diocese saw that name and thought, oh, this Father Nicholas Emo. And at the same time, that Father Nicholas Emo is buried out in Lombardina. And the school and the parish there was talking about doing up his headstone and commemorating it, because it was I think it's this year, there's a special anniversary about it. But Mark, that's in our office, went to this information night and he read the story, and then he felt, oh my goodness, this Nicholas Emo was a part of helping these people to get bones or take our people. And I think there was a child, might have been a mother or male, and it was documented there, or it was, they put their journals, what they call them. And then as they read on, it was that I don't know, I shouldn't use the word assist, but those bones that they were taken and that his name was in that story, it would have been, they figured that they didn't get baptized, or they were sick, and he did protect a lot more people than those that were taken. And I've got to read the full story, but this is what. And so Mark was taken back, so he went to the Yoorrook office and spoke to the Yoorrook people there, and actually, it was at the NAIDOC March last year, where they marched through town, and now, usually they used to end up on the Shire lawn, but the Shire got narky about, I don't know, something. So, and straight across the road from the Shire office is our cathedral and our big old grass area that it's a nice space actually. French Day Church, and that's where the march could end, and they set up their tents and have their speeches and smoking and raising the flags or holding the flags, because we're going to put flagpoles into it. And our parish said yes, that could thing. So, and Mark was over there, so he started talking to Neil McKenzie, who was one of our leaders now, and Elder, I suppose I can call him. And when Mark approached him, he said, look, this fucking Nicholsima was a part of this bowling thing. What do you call it? Recreation, yeah. And I feel really bad about the church being involved with it, you know. And I couldn't believe my ears when he was telling me the story in Derek, and you know, yes, that's the story. You know, his name is there, but it's time that, you know, that we heal and we forgive each other and we walk together. It was a really nice, I thought he'd have a backlash, and he thought he was going to get backlashed as well. So now we're in the talks of talking with them and see how we could, you know, our Catholic parish be a part of the ceremony when the bones do come back home to be laid to rest. But it was a really, in truth telling of those stories and hearing the other side, and people, accepting and want to heal. And that's a part of their healing, is that they hear other people's stories and they accept them and they move forward together. And I think that's a lot. We need to do a lot more of those sorts of stuff. But having the time to sit down and share stories is the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story about reconciliation and then Mark. But knowing that this might be something, having the courage of not average person and that love being shown, a difficult conversation. Well, one more question before we finish up. Is there anyone that has anything that they would really like to ask? Yeah, thank you, Beth.
Sure.
Thank you. I volunteer with these, and we have our program is universal in that anyone is able to ring and ask for assistance. A couple of the people, our companions who we visit regularly, we are aware that they are Aboriginal men and women. And I'm conscious that we also have a volunteer base that is from all different backgrounds as well. I guess there's two parts to this in a sense, in that I'm really keen to understand how when we have people, companions who ring in who may not be identified, who may not identify, so when we have people who aren't identified, how we can embed that self-determination principle so that it is there for people, for Aboriginal people to access. And then the other part, I guess, was to do around perhaps some of or perhaps it's just me acknowledging that we need to up our cultural safety so that we're there and ready.
Would you like to answer that question? Everyone.
Sorry, can you repeat the first question? I didn't quite understand.
So with our programs, because they're accessible to all, and some people we are aware are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and I guess I'm keen to understand how we can, in a program that is designed generally for all, that is not specific, how we can then tailor solutions that embed self-determination. And then I guess the other part is I'm conscious that we don't always have people who may be Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander but haven't identified, and how we can improve to respond to that.
Okay, thank you. I think that when you create a culturally safe space, it's for everyone. I think the issue for Aboriginal people is, because of the history, it's hard to go to an organisation Some people haven't identified because of that fear of what happened when you did identify. So I think the best way to handle that is to have that culturally safe space for everyone, including Aboriginal people, letting people know that they're welcome no matter what, that you're there to serve, and, you know, we do, you know, like really everyone should have an acknowledgement of country. Having the Aboriginal flag just makes people feel safe, and having a safe space that people can identify, I think that's the main thing. But we only got this one last question, so I just want to say, you guys are very important. I want to reiterate that. Thank you very much for being our allies. Without the churches, without the St Vincent's, all the mobs, we would be in a really dire strait. So it's because of people like you that we are even where we are today. And I just want to thank you. Also want to say, be political and support us, especially since the opposition has walked back on the treaty. That's going to make it a little bit difficult for us in the negotiation when we do negotiate. And we do need our allies to stand up and really support us. And thank you all for asking me to come here today too. Thank you.
Just after any final comments, that was a great way.
Oh, final comments. I'm going to get everybody's phone number and email, so if I ever need any of your services, I'll be ringing up. Where's Josh? Where's contact? But no, thank you guys too as for inviting me or dropping me in, playing artists. I'm just, we're sort of, hopefully we put NATSIC on the map. National Aboriginal Choice around the Catholic Council, and that's the boss sitting in the middle of there. But hopefully that would be the first go-to place for anything that anybody wants to know about any Aboriginal stuff. And you've got a, what do you call that, cross-cultural thing online as well that anybody can tap into as well. So you might give that a plug later, make your work hard. But thank you for the invitation. Josh, where are you? Another one bossing me around. You'll be hearing from me because, yeah, when I go back, my church is going to be, looking for a new start. And actually, we're on the journey of doing that. So, and my community is as well. So more services that we could get on the ground to help out more, especially for our families are the most important people. We always look at getting solutions for our kids and working very hard for our children, but sometimes all the family needs, the mums and dads and uncles and aunties, because a lot of our grannies are passing away now and leaving it to the next generation, which gets a little bit hard up there with everything in their lives at the moment. So, yeah. So thank you.
I personally would like to thank you, Josh, for inviting me. You freaked me out when you asked me to be on the panel, as I am truly not into public speaking. I prefer to do it by sitting at the table with everyone else, where I feel more comfortable. So thank you so much.
I think, Erica, that last story about Ma kind of embodies, for us as Catholic social services, we recognise at times when our role, we may have been in a role that might have been not maybe displaced Aboriginal people or didn't see the best in Aboriginal perspectives, that might be part of our history. But as mentioned, there is also great examples of where we've been working alongside Aboriginal people for a long time. So we continue in these stories. We must be honest about the things that we're proud of and the things that we're not. And then together, where do we need to share power and where do we need to build each other's capacity, wisdom, knowledge as we have the vision that you said that in 7 generations. But it's important work. If this is our commitment as social service organisations, a real commitment to the gospel about reconciliation, walking in justice, our vision for our social services we can't not engage. And I love that you called us to the gospel is not just about being nice and just meeting the need. There's questions of justice and systemic change, and there's systemic change in this space that we need to challenge ourselves and our organisations to be not afraid of stepping into. So just as these women are not afraid to step into those spaces, we need to do. So thank you, everyone.